you feel for these players. I think it's safe to assume, we don't know with 100% certainty, but I think it's safe to assume that they did not know that any intel or knowledge, tactical information that they were receiving was done so in an unethical way. I think it's safe to say that. And to your point, Sharms, that they still have to go out and perform, put together the performances individually and collectively. Regardless of what the team's strategy is, what type of system they're playing, what type of opponent they're playing. But as Claire said, I can't remember whether the record button was pressed or not, that most often with these types of issues and anything in life, that two things can be true. We can support the players, acknowledge that they still had to put in the investment, the dedication, the hard work in order to achieve these results, to podium 3 times in a row, but that the technical staff can still be guilty. And Claire, you were talking about this. I'm not going to steal it. It was your text to me this morning that in two things being true, the players' performances can be acknowledged, it can be tarnished and called into question, but the technical staff are still part of the team, and that docking points can still be a possibility.
Yeah. You spoke just briefly about right. We don't know with any certainty whether or not players knew at whatever point in time over whatever time period this has been going on for. But we also have to acknowledge the massive power dynamic between players and staff as well. Right. And I think that just needs to be put out there. I know that Amy and I have been talking about this a lot over the last few days. And just how angry and nauseated we both are about the whole thing. Because you really do feel for the players, and it's not their fault, right? This isn't their fault. They're, and they do still have to perform, but it's not really about the information that was obtained. It's about how it was obtained, and it's about the unethical behavior of the staff, and the staff is part of the team. So, it's an awful thing to say, but yeah, I think docking points is fair, and there has to be some kind of tangible consequence. Otherwise, there's no deterrent for this kind of behavior to in the future. Right. You can send home a staff member, but there's no deterrent realistically for a program or for a team to continue to do this. So.
And to go back to the Steph Labe tweet, sorry to jump in there, Sharms. Yeah. Players' own integrity is at risk here, right? Sort of hangs in the balance, will be questioned, but also the program's integrity. Not just of the technical staff and those individuals who were complicit or who will be involved or identified as these external investigations take place, be it by Canada Soccer, COC, IOC, FIFA, and sanctions and repercussions come in the near or not so near future. But the legacy of Christine Sinclair risks damaging. The legacy of Steph Labe, that wry smile in those penalties, risks being tarnished, right? She still had to go out and save those penalties, but everything will be called into question as a result of the actions of these staff members.
If I was going to play devil's advocate here, what if the players knew? Because I can't believe that there isn't a player on the men's team or the women's team that doesn't know that this was going on. Is that, do you think it's possible?
I think it's that they didn't know.
Completely didn't know.
I think back to my time in the national team, and I was oblivious to where information came from. I was too focused on my own performance to really question where information I was given came from. All of the game tape we watched was just game tape, that we could. It was from open games, not behind closed door games. And any information I was given verbally, I never thought to question. Why would I really? Mm-hmm. So, I think it's possible, but I just don't think we can throw around these absolutes they absolutely no way they knew, because we don't know that, and it's speculative.
Yeah, but we can. If there's a video session, Dubs, and listen, again, speculation. If there's a video session, and what is being shown is an aerial view of, in this case, New Zealand training, I think the players would figure it out for themselves. I'm assuming that wasn't the case. That wasn't how this transpired.
And it remains that when we were, I say we, all of us, the past players on this podcast, like drone use wasn't a thing back then, right? And now, pardon?
There weren't drones when you played.
Easy.
Well, I'm not that old.
The iPad wasn't invented when we played.
Wait a minute. But I mean, the most recent, I think, publication that went out for a post or some, like a job opening with Canada Soccer, part of that, the description for responsibilities was you need to be able to operate a drone. I mean, what that doesn't say is that you're going to be using that to spy on the opponent. But I think it's part of being an analyst. You're, with my work with CF Montreal, the analyst is frequently walking around the training pitch holding a drone. Like, it's part of getting that tactical view of training. It's part of getting even your social media manager getting footage of training. I think it's just part of modern day football. But like going back to what Claire was saying, I think it's important, and I'm going to reiterate this, we don't know with absolute certainty that the players didn't know. But I think as a player, you're in that, and Forrest and Jimmy, you guys can speak to this. You put blind trust and faith in your coaches, in your staff, that they're going to do their job. And they're going to do that in a sporting manner. They're going to do that in an ethical way, in a Canadian way. Because I think as Canadians, we have higher standards. And you are very insular. It's a siloed approach. Everybody is doing the respective roles and responsibilities. And then you come together on game day, match day -1 or -3, whatever it is, and you put all those pieces together. And so I think, though, I would like to say, and I can't speak for the players who were in camp and involved, but as a player, if I found out, I would like to say that I would say, I do not want to see that footage. If that was like posed to me or that was put to me as an option, say, I do not want to do it this way. I don't want to get a result in this manner. And I would hope that other Canadian players would do the same thing.
And we put that trust in staff members the same way they put their trust in us that we're not going to dope, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a team. The staff is part of the team. It's all kind of one entity. And yeah, I mean, like we were talking the other day about how we still have trouble taking Advil because we're like so traumatized by being asked for pee after performances. But yeah, it's all one entity, and I think that's the part that's really difficult to come to terms with in terms of how sanctions are handed out. I think the COC Shoemaker, is that his name? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just spoke and I kind of agree with what he said, which is what they have done what is within their jurisdiction in terms of coaching suspensions. But further sanctions from the IOC or from FIFA are kind of up to the IOC and FIFA. Like, I don't think the COC really has any kind of jurisdiction to take it much further.
Jimmy, this is though a sport that is embedded in a culture of deception and cheating, right? You watch any match, we see diving and embellishment, and we complain about it, but certainly in certain parts of the world it's accepted. I mean,
there's a mechanism to punish that, though. Right?
Yeah, there is. It's right.
It's not used.
No, not enough.
That's a different podcast.
No, I understand. but if you're and to Sharms, sorry, Sharms, it's just I'm having difficulty understanding, and this is a Wong or naivete level. The ethics at the Olympics is the standard higher than the ethics at a Copa or a FIFA run sanctioned matches. And that is more for the Olympians to offer an answer, because this seems like par for the course for FIFA matches, for World Cup. And I'm not saying that everyone cheats. I'm just saying you hear about this all the time. So are the standards higher, the ethical standards higher for the Olympics, Dubs? Is that why you're very upset? Or you're upset about the whole enchilada? Sorry, I'm using.
Is that why you're upset? Says the man to the woman.
Yes.
No.
Tell us why you're emotional.
That's bullshit.
Tell us why you're emotional.
I'm a very angry woman. Wonger.
No, you and Claire just talked about that's fucking. Don't do that.
No,
That's
I'm
bullshit.
I
We're
know. You're right.
joking.
I'm
It is
trying to
bullshit.
figure out an answer because in professional sports, it seems like everyone's saying, "Oh, this is such a big," and also we're Canadians, so we say, "Oh, we're going to play fair."
Hmm.
If no one else is playing fucking fair, because everyone does this, are we then hurting our play, our all of this? If this is par for the course, for you hear about this, and so are you guys upset? And all of you, but I'm asking you because you're the Olympian. That's why I was bringing it up and use that reference. No one else played in the Olympics except you and Claire. I don't know what it's like to walk in except Sharms, but that was the beer Olympics at university. And it was Ryerson who you represented, so not as high. So that level of ethics and kind of, hey, we're here for a higher event, like it means something more. Is that where the kind of why this is so upsetting to you on a personal level?
The soapbox ability of it.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, the theoretically, or the Olympics should have a higher ethical and moral compass as a tournament. And I think when you're no, it does. And let me finish. That's been discredited, right? But I mean, when you're an athlete at said games, there is a sense of that, or at least there was for me, where I wasn't changing the way I was behaving, from an ethical and moral standpoint, but you were acutely aware that as a member of that Canadian delegation, it was more than just a regular cap. It was more than not more than a World Cup or worth more than one of these other sporting competitions, but you felt like the breadth and what the games represented, that you had to elevate that somehow. And that it was in owing to your confrères and consoeurs that as part of that Canadian delegation, that you were holding them to a higher standard and you were doing it together and you were accountable to one another. As Canadians, I imagine it's similar with other nations, but I think that's something that, and maybe it's because of the Ben Johnson history and how that maybe marred the way that Canadians were viewed worldwide. I mean, it certainly wasn't doping, like Claire alluded to it before. 3 months in advance, I've talked about this in a podcast before, we had to write down our whereabouts on a daily basis so that if somebody knocked on our door and we weren't there to provide our urine, which we'd already listed all of the substances that we were taking, that was a strike against us. You were considered, it was 3 strikes and then you're out. That was considered like a positive doping test if you just weren't there when you said you were. But I mean, that's what we had to adhere to. And I think that's why the Olympics are part of that, at least as an athlete who's participated.
There was a poll, and I forget the details. Sorry, Claire, but you've heard this before. There's a poll years ago with Olympians, and the question was something like, if you could take a pill that would guarantee you gold, but it means that you die at 60 or something.
It was 55, yeah.
55? Would you take the pill?
Or something like that,
and overwhelming the majority said, yeah, we would. Winning that gold is absolutely everything.
I took a few of those and I'm still alive.
Yeah.
With a gold
That's
cup.
all the Viagra for us.
Really though, Craig?
That was in Mexico at a rave, though.
Yeah. There's a little blue pill.
But it is a mindset, right? I mean, Claire, you talk about the Olympian mindset. Might be a little bit different to, say, the professional mindset.
I mean, there's no way I would have done that, but yeah.
And gold?
I don't know. I mean, you have to take kind of I guess it depends on your outlook on your career and life after that, or what you want to do. But yeah, I mean, I want to go back to something Amy said, because we've talked about this as well, is that when you go to the Olympics, you're not part of just the soccer team, you're part of the Canadian Olympic team. And I mean, Scott, I was just in the press conference that Kevin Blue did, and Scott Russell asked the question at the end. He said, he's in Paris right now, doing all of the kind of pre-Olympic coverage, and we'll be hosting the kind of main primetime show from Paris. And all of the talk about the Canadian Olympic team leading up until this point has been about this. It has completely overshadowed the rest of the team. It has completely overshadowed all of the other fantastic, like phenomenal stories about other athletes, this has dominated the conversation, and dominated kind of the way that the Canadian team is being the Canadian team as a whole is being perceived, and it's highly distracting and really, really upsetting in that context. I mean, he actually asked the question if Kevin Blue thought that the team should be withdrawn, which he emphatically said no. But yeah, so I think that Amy's right. Like, there's that sense of you're not just part of you're part of two teams. You're part of a bigger kind of collective Canadian team at the Olympics. So there really is a higher standard there, because you're not just representing the soccer team, you're representing the whole team as a whole. So, and yeah, I wouldn't take a pill for a gold medal to kick it at 55. I mean, like, no.
Well, you know, it's funny. I'm sure the majority of those athletes were probably in their early to mid 20s, and 55 seemed a hell of a long way away. Let me tell you, kids.
I don't know, man. Like, I'm 41. It still feels like a long ways away.
It's not, Claire.
But like,
I'm also 41.
Yes, Amy and I are the exact same age. But I don't know. It's a weird poll to do.
Well, Jimmy, Rick Westhead's column, wrote about the systemic use of spying and drones in Canadian football, and as Claire mentioned earlier, this power structure in sport, in life. In that column, he mentioned how coaches have come to him and said, "Listen, we were pressured to do this, and we were told that if we weren't willing to do this, then we had no place on this stuff." Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me. I think a lot of times, if that's actually happened, then that is leaders that want people on board that they can become the puppet master with and control people, which is wrong. And you're taking advantage of people, and you're putting people in awkward situations. They've got a job and you're asking them to do things that they don't want to do, but they're scared to get fired, or they're scared that they're going to lose their income, or they'll be punished throughout the Canadian landscape because they're not listening to this leader. And I think it's bullshit. And I think if that's actually happened and you're asking people to cheat, those individuals that are involved in all of this should never work in Canadian football again. They should be finished completely. Going back to just a couple of things. When you guys were talking about the players, if the players do know about it, then there's a massive issue. 9 times out of 10, the majority of times when you're training and as a player, when you sign your contract is to go out there and play football and perform. Your contract is not to put training sessions together. That's for the managers. The managers sit behind the scenes. As a player, you have no idea what they're doing. The staff get together. They put everything in place of how your training session is going to go, what your game plan is, your tactics, the philosophy, style of play. Everything is through the coaching staff. That's their job. That's their role, is to put that together. And then what they do is they implement it through the players who will go out there and train. They have no idea what's happening behind the scenes. And if they're cheating, they should be punished, but not the players, because players have no idea. They don't understand what's going on. And I think when the question was asked, should the players be pulled out? No, bullshit. If they don't know, then there's no chance that they should be, because why should they be punished? And we've seen it many times. And Claire, you're right, talking about, they might get the medals taken away, or they could have lost points in that game. We've seen it in the Premier League, where behind the scenes or in the office, they mess up financially, and teams at the beginning of the season have been deducted 20 points. That's got nothing to do with the players. The players have no idea what goes on with finances, but it's always the players that end up getting punished in the end, which is bullshit.
Now, my only fans be that
players and the fans.
There's a certain amount of rumors that have been going around, and even with the alumni, this is something that's a worst kept secret that this has been going on. So to think that the players wouldn't have known, men or women, somewhere down the line, knew nothing about this ever, I think is naive.
But it creates a big ask, isn't it, for a player to confront that? They might disagree with it and say, "Hey, guys, you girls, do you hear what's going on behind the scenes?" It's a big ask to ask an athlete who depends on their selection to then either go public or to confront a coach, right?
No, but I think the players need to get together as well, though, because if a manager does come in and says, "Do you know what? I've flown a drone and I've got training sessions of the opposition and what they've done. Do you guys want to see this?" Well, now you know you're part of it. You're guilty by association now. And if you don't stick up for it, then yeah, there's going to be repercussions. And it's going to come bite you back in the ass. So if you do know that that's going on, then something has to be said.
But it's really hard to kind of talk about this, but like what is the appropriate consequence then just sending home staff members? Right? Because what is the goal of being at the Olympics? It's to win a medal, and it's to right? Like that's why you're there. And it's about the team and performance and how well they do on the field. And I mean, do you actually deter this kind of behavior just by sending staff members home? Like I agree. I think sending the whole team home is probably not fair. But docking points, I think, is fair. I mean, there has to be some kind of like sending assistant coaches home and things like that is not really tangible. Even sending a head coach home, but leaving the assistant coach there to coach, like it's not really a tangible consequence.
Could we finally get the answer to the age-old question? Do footballers need coaches? Can we send them all home and just let the players play? I would love that. How great would that be? So the staff has gone home. We can't, risk any more of this scandal getting bigger. They're all gone home. So, hey, Jesse, you decide what formation we're playing. Have you ever
tried to do that, Sherman? Have you ever tried to like be a coach and a player at the same time?
On this podcast, every fucking show.
Yeah, well, that's different.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
But quite honestly, I mean, this is my thought on this is, okay, yeah, dock points, I can see that happening. But the whole talk about stripping medals over the allegations of spying on other teams' training, that to me would be extremely harsh. There's cheating, right? But there's levels of cheating as well.
No,
I'm not condoning this.
No.
You don't agree, Jimmy?
Cheating's cheating.
Cheating's cheating.
You would strip the gold medal if it's proven they used.
How you're going to categorize it? Cheating is cheating.
Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't.
Okay, so you guys would strip if it was proven that they used drones to spy on the opponents at the last Olympics. You would condone those medals being stripped.
I would condone an investigation into it a little bit more deeply.
And to discover what, like, what they're looking for to justify that sanction.
Well, in Rick Westhead's article, he talked about the fact that they spied on Japan, which is the opponent that they drew on the run to claiming that gold medal. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I guess you weigh it. And Claire and I even had the conversation, and I don't know the answer, so this is maybe stupid to bring up, but we were talking about doping and being an Olympic athlete and a Canadian athlete. Apologies, because the same family that walked in on me via my unlocked connecting door at my hotel are being very, very loud right now, because that's exactly where I've set up.
Is that what that is?
They might want to join the podcast. So for context, dear listener, I was watching Colombia, France in my bed yesterday, exhausted, and a lovely Chinese family walked into my room at the Intercontinental Hotel. I was like, hello, would you care to watch the game with me? They declined.
It could have been worse, Dubs. It could have been worse.
And they left, and then I locked the door.
But you usually leave the door open. It was because they were Chinese, right?
Yeah. I have an open... Shut up.
You were open
door policy.
Once again.
I'm just curious, Dubs. Did you actually ask me? Excuse me. By the way, are you Chinese?
That's right.
Yeah, seriously.
Are you just assuming?
Irrelevant.
They look like Wonger. Really, they look half like Wonger, and so I assumed.
Perhaps I should have said Asian family.
That's
sure.
They seemed lovely. They
I
were
was
more
very
embarrassed
triggered
than I was.
I was triggered, Dub.
And we've avoided eye contact in the hallway.
Were you clothed?
Yeah,
Were you
I was
wearing
saying,
clothes?
I was semi-clothed, but the covers were up. so I mean,
Semi-clothed.
Oh,
I
And the
was in the
computer.
privacy of my room.
And the computer was right on your bed, and
They're
we
telling
don't know
their
what you
friends
were
there was
watching.
this white lady next door
Yeah.
who you walked in on under the covers at 3 p.m. Who
Yeah.
was in bed at 3 p.m.?
We shared the elevator earlier and they said, "Hi, Karen." It's like, oh, that's nice.
Did their father wink at you?
That's right. Oh, God. What
Anyway,
the
sorry,
hell
you were
was I
saying.
talking about?
Yeah, medals being stripped. Speaking of
Right.
stripped.
Right.
I don't have a great
Um,
answer for that question. Like, I don't.
So, can I ask this about the integrity of the tournament then? Does the IOC need to make a decision, or FIFA, whoever's in control of the actual, they need to tell people immediately what they're going to do with these points, correct? Or the integrity of the tournament can be at stake. Like, you have to make an executive decision immediately and just say, hey, Canada can only come out of this with top 3 points. They have to win every match. If they don't, they're not going to get through because they're going to lose 4.5 points or whatever they deem correct. But isn't that fair to the rest of the tournament?
I'll just say that I think they need to come swiftly if it is going to come, because, and these types of investigations don't happen quickly, right? They don't make haste with their work, right? So I see it like the worst case scenario at this point would be Canada goes on this unbelievable run to defend their gold medal. They make it to the podium, win a medal, and then it's stripped after the fact because of what's happened now, not because of past performances.
Right.
Because of just in camp right now in Paris and the ineptitude and poor judgment, right?
I always wonder about that. When you win a medal and then it's stripped 2 years later, or more importantly, you win a gold because the gold medalist was stripped 2 years later. Does it really feel like a gold?
I wouldn't know. We didn't medal.
But no, I would say 100% yes. I think it's then the athlete is robbed of the adulation and the pomp and the circumstance on the day. I feel badly for them, but I think 100%, like at that point, it's up to the people around them and their entourage to celebrate them, even if it's 2 years after the retirement or whenever it's handed to them.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really wrap my head around what should happen about previous results. I think that certainly requires a much more in-depth discussion and investigation. But I agree that if a decision is going to be made, it needs to happen quickly. And there's not a lot of time. These games are very close together. And I think they just honestly didn't have enough time to make a formal decision prior to their first match, but it has to happen quickly. This is not going to go away. We've been talking about this 24 hours a day for the last, it's an exaggeration, but for the last 4 or 5 days, and it's not going to go away. It's going to be the daily topic of conversation, unless some sort of decision has been made, because the questions are like, what should the punishment be? They shouldn't be punished. They should get this punishment. Like, it's just this back and forth. And until there is sort of a concrete resolution, that's going to continue.
I will say, though, Craig, that the leadership of Canada Soccer have dealt with it pretty well so far. They've done what they had to do. I'm not sure in previous years that would have been the case. That they suspended the coach, sent her packing. She's going to get fired. Right, but they had to go through the legalities and do an investigation internally at first. We understand that, but they've dealt with it pretty quickly, I think. And their fire's still burning, but they've put out what fire they can. I suspect, though, there's a lot more fires about to be ignited, though.
Yeah, I would agree with you on the former regime. I think that Kevin Blue has done an excellent job so far, and even with this, he's dealt with it very swiftly. And he's still on that clean slate where he's come in. He's like, well, this started before my watch. He knew nothing about it. He's going to do an investigation, and then he's going to have to say, listen, this is what we found. We were going to oppose it to the IOC. We're going to give it to the information. They're going to do whatever they will with it at that moment. But I think that's where he's going to make this come as transparent as they possibly can, going by what we've seen so far from Kevin Blue. I think he's been flawless so far in how he's dealt with things. And I'm sure he doesn't really want to deal with this at all, of course, but I think this is what he'll do. He'll do a thorough investigation internally as well. And that information will be handed over to the IOC, and they're going to do whatever they do with it.
What a shit sandwich for Kevin Blue to start off with, though.
It was going so well, wasn't it?
I think the other good thing as well with Kevin, and when he started in his position, he has no relationships with any of these individuals. He has no ties.
Yeah.
So when he's making these decisions, there's no emotion in it. It's just fact. Did you do this? Yes. No. Get out. And I think his timing is absolutely perfect.
Well, in fact, Bev is the final. It's a lot.
Did he make the decision? I thought it was the COC that made the decision.
No, he'd have influence though, because it was more. Yeah, some attention was brought to them through the CSA.
Right.
Of
Okay.
things that have happened. So they're working in tandem.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And what about Bev, by the way? Bev has basically initially said she knew nothing about this.
Yeah.
And then all
she didn't answer that question though, Greg. She didn't directly answer that question, really.
Initially, though, she did, right?
Yeah, but that says it all when she doesn't answer it.
I know.
When she removes herself, that just screams guilty. But I've lost all respect for that woman.
I've said this before. There's no good answer to that question. Either you did it, or you have no control over your staff members. Like those are the two scenarios here.
It is, yeah. I think.
I read your tweet, Claire. It was very good.
Initially, I think she did admit. She said that she had no knowledge of it in the original statement. I believe.
You're right. Actually, I think you're right.
Yeah,
you're right, Sherman. Fine.
And then what Shoemaker came out and said, representing the COC, was that he didn't say she knew overtly or outright, but he made a statement where it said it's come to light now that we believe that Bev Priestman did have knowledge of the drone flight.
Yeah,
of course.
My suspicion is there's some very nervous people right now in Canadian soccer circles, going back a few years. That there's new leadership there, and they don't want this calamity to continue, this embarrassment, right? And they've got to act swiftly and strongly within Canadian soccer circles. Some very nervous people indeed. And Dubs, as far as the culture of the camp itself, I mean, I've heard a couple of things, and now you have too. It wasn't great either. Hasn't been great, and I think we're going to learn a lot more about that in the coming days as well.
Do you mean wasn't before or
before? Yeah. Going back sometime.
Even worse now. I'd heard some whispers about that, and Claire, you were talking about a power imbalance and how that happens within a staff and people feeling coerced, that they're going to lose their job if they don't do something that they deem to be unethical. They're still guilty. They made a poor decision. But I'd heard that the players or a faction of those players didn't love the dynamic between Bev and the players. And then people on the ground that I've been speaking with there, I mean, the players are united. And even if you just look beyond the words of Kaylin Sheridan and Jesse Fleming yesterday post game, I mean, I think the hatred they now feel for Bev was palpable, kind of just beneath the surface of those words. And people on the ground are saying, like, this team is close knit, they're galvanized because they have to perform again in spite of something, despite this or in spite of this shitstorm and everything that's surrounding them, that's clouding this run here to try to defend their gold medal. But it's fueled now, I think, for hatred and disdain for their coach.
Strong words, right? But that's the feeling, it seems.
That's a fact.
Tell you what, there's a lot of pressure now on Summer McIntosh to change the narrative around the Canadian team right now.
Maggie McNeil, bring it.
Let's get in that pool, girls and boys. Let's get in that pool.
Put that on them.
I was also there. Sorry, Dubs. I was also just thinking on a pure business level. She's going to be fired with cause. Usually, when people are let go, there's a package involved, all that kind of stuff. She's sitting on a very healthy salary, and now she's going to be, you cheated, you're done. And it's just an interesting from 4 years ago and winning the gold medal. What a tumultuous kind of fall for this for her. And I find it odd, and maybe just her wife is from New Zealand. And I'm sitting there going, and her wife's involved in soccer in Canada, correct, with Vancouver, or in BC. And there seems to be, I'm just like, is this a coincidence? Or is this a, there's all kinds, my whole brain goes conspiracy theory. And then I'm also thinking the new regime on the soccer side, Kevin Blue came in as a solver of financial problems, and I'm coming in, but it's all these people who've been in the Canadian soccer realm, who've been all, the last 20 years running the show. And Peter Grusso, I'm not saying anything good or bad. I'm just saying he's been around for a lot of this stuff because he was Ontario Soccer Association. And to your point, Charms, who's it going to touch in the fallout? This is a daytime soap opera reality show.
Well, it's already touched John Herdman, right? With the reports about the Honduras match a few years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me that was a isolated incident? No, probably not. Who was around him at the time? This investigation will take time. You're right. It has to, because it's going to be canvassing a lot of Canadian football, both professional and amateur, isn't it?
Authorities already knew about past expressions. So they already are aware of this.
And where did it live? Did it get pushed under the rug, swept, as they say?
Well, it certainly wasn't overly made public, but
as they say, Dubs.
But so Craig, in that case, though, so if it was dealt with, but was it officially dealt with, or was it off the record dealt with? I mean, can they revert back to that and say, listen, this is systemic, an issue there, or was it, yeah, it happened, but it didn't happen? A bit like, Area 51, basically.
Like when Honduras is reporting that there's a drone above their training center or session.
Was it a drone or was it a UFO? Yeah, that one. That's the one. Well, I mean, if it was dealt with by FIFA and officially on official levels, then you can revert back to it, right? If it was kind of dismissed and never really happened, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, then you can't use that, right?
Yeah, it's a case where they said stop doing this, and then it was evident that they were doing it. Whether they could prove it or not was probably a difficult situation for them, maybe with the Honduras game. But this goes back and really to John Herdman, and he's going to be the one that's going to have to answer some questions as well, because the relationship with him and Bev Priestman is tight, and the coaches intertwine between each other, and it looks like it's systematic.
Jimmy, you ever notice a drone over York 9 when you were coaching there?
Yes, I did. It was a CPL.
Was it your drone?
What's that?
Is CPL renowned for cheating?
Yeah, I did it myself.
You're just playing that, weren't you?
They are useful when you're using for your own team, and then even with the CPL, they used to fly them over just for social media and all that kind of stuff. But you're never using it to watch opposition. You just don't. I think you have enough, and there's enough out there where you can really scout opposition without flying a drone over a training session.
Well, that's the thing. Like, women's football is not a huge world, right? Like, there is a significant amount of game footage out for the majority of the teams that you can find. Like, like the unnecessary component of it is not insignificant. Like, this is just, it's kind of mind-boggling as to why you would even do it.
Yeah, doesn't make sense.
I agree. That's what I said last pod. It's unnecessary.
It's so
right. You can condemn it.
Do it for the France game, maybe, or the Colombia game, but New Zealand.
And that's not to say that there's like scenarios where it is necessary and you should do it. Like, you should never do it. But it adds to sort of, like, it just makes you increasingly incredulous when you realize that, like, there's so much game footage. Like, why? Just why? Not only don't do it, but why did you do it?
So there's no value for there's enough out there that the value is limited.
I'm going to say
compared to the risk. Sorry.
That the risk versus reward there. I mean, the risk far outweighs the reward. But I will say, playing devil's advocate as like a caveat to it for why you would risk it, especially at an Olympics where the security is so high. They're spending billions of dollars to make sure it's safe, and you're trying to fly a fucking drone.
And it's illegal.
Right. So that
Oh.
aside,
It was illegal too.
It's a no-fly zone.
is he being sarcastic?
Well, that's why he's
No.
arrested.
No.
He was
No.
arrested.
I know he was arrested, but I didn't know what. Like, I didn't recognize. You guys remember what I went through this week? I'm picking up the pieces here. So
Yeah,
that
it's
I didn't
stupid,
realize
it's
it-
risky, but
Right.
it's incompetent and
Yeah.
illegal.
and illegal.
But my devil's advocate point is like penalties, set pieces, formations, players, you're inundated with the amount of information that's out there. You have access to it even more than just like the layperson. But in the reality of the women's game or the men's game, with how congested the fixtures are for these players, toiling and playing in club setups, which were way more professional than Claire and I played in, and even you could argue for Jimmy, but especially just us, right? We were team unattached. No, I know. Team, it was just kind of a little tongue-in-cheek dig there. But we were team unattached, right? Like we were basically in the national team setup full time. So the coaches didn't have to deal with this. But as a national team coach now, you have so little time in camp with these players to practice how you're going to set up your structure against these teams. If you have how the other team, their system and their structure and their tactical setup, that can be of value. Because you have so little time and you're managing loads of players who just played on Sunday and your match is on Wednesday and somebody else is on a different schedule. I'm just saying that is perhaps what they're willing to risk just to get that nugget of information.
You could watch the last 10 games they played, though. Maybe
Yeah,
get a
exactly.
hint of how they play.
Yeah, and
Right.
like my
It doesn't give you much watching the day before. For me, it's just people that are how would you say, they're not confident in their ability, and that's why you're doing that. What am I going to get on a Friday's training session? I'm going to get a walkthrough. I might see what their formation is going to be. But if I'm watching the last 4 or 5 games of this team, I know their squad, I know the players. And what are they going to do? Something magical where they're going to bring 11 brand new players in, and all of a sudden now their formation and tactic and the way they're going to play is going to be completely different from what I've just watched over the last 4 or 5 games? It's nothing for me. I think it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit.
No,
You
I
do it
totally
good
agree. I totally agree. And like to extrapolate further, are you going to make significant adjustments to your formation and the players that you choose and how you approach the match based on watching training of another team that you wouldn't have already made by watching previous game tape, right? Like it's just, I totally agree, Jimmy. Yeah.
And against New Zealand, you should be on the front foot dictating how they play, not how you play anyway, right? Yeah. Really. Let's be honest. I bet you, though, all the drone pilots from all the other teams, because they probably all do it, they're all like, for fuck's sakes, thanks, Canada. Thanks a lot. Now we've got to, go back home with our drones, tucked between our legs.
We hear this all the time about this cheating. And everybody said, oh, cheating. It happens all the time. It doesn't happen all the goddamn time. Let's stop all that nonsense. This doesn't happen all the time.
It's a much better narrative.
Happens all the time, Jimmy.
No, it doesn't. I'm tired of hearing that.
It's not normal, Jimmy, and it doesn't happen all the time.
Jimmy, look
what was
up
that? What did you say?
It's not normal.
It's not normal.
And
It doesn't happen all the time. We're going back to that pill.
It's a big deal.
Maybe you're stressed at work. I don't know.
Jimmy would take the pill.
No, I wouldn't.
He rigidly adheres to it.
Running.
I was just thinking if I took the pill, I wouldn't be here right now, would I? Fuck. I should have done it.
No, not that pill.
You wouldn't be there here either if you took that pill.
I would have got a
It's true.
stick.
It's true. You wouldn't be one now.
I mean,
You pull out
Jimmy's
your
holding up his computer somehow, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you guys are a hoot.
It's going up, it's going down, it's going up, it's going down. I know. To close the show, I think we should all just, after this, all of us go outside, look up. There's somewhere up there. It's probably something. Having a little peek.
Hey, Wonker, I wanted to ask you, because of your corporate background, how do you think Kevin Blue should attack this? Because when you're looking for money, you're looking for corporate help, they had all this great momentum moving forward. Jesse Marsh traveling around Canada.
He's got to lean on. It's a great question. I was going to ask him, but I didn't have a chance to. I was going to ask, what's your first fire you're putting out? And I didn't want to throw him, push it out there, but I was wondering where his first responsibility was going to be. And it's still got to be, look, he's got to be the front facing guy. He's doing I think a really great job at putting himself out there, but he's got to keep playing. I'm new to this. I'm cleaning house. There won't be this assembly of cheaters behind me going forward. I mean, it really has to be like a movie script. And that's what you do when there's bullshit going on, when there's things you have to follow the script. And he's doing it really well right now. But I would argue he's in for some bigger surprises coming forward. And that's where he needs to have conversations with the legacy people who've been, he needs to know everything before he can handle it. So that's him doing his research and finding out who he can trust is the first place he has to start, because you can't keep lying and keeping your head in the sand. And you'd be lying. And if you said, oh, I looked into this and it's not, you know, you're not going to have any issues going forward for 2026 sponsors for all of these things, because you know, the women's team have things going forward with the Olympics right now, but the FIFA World Cup is coming in 2026. And then you're sitting there going, if they don't put things together quickly, and almost like the integrity of the Olympics that Claire was talking about has to be done swiftly. If they don't do it swiftly and powerfully, you know, hey, we're going to stick to this diligently. They could be seeing themselves in a lot of trouble financially too.
If I could be so bold as to suggest who Kevin Blue's next phone call should be to, it is DJI, also known as Dezhang Innovations. They have become the world's largest drone maker, having achieved global dominance in less than 20 years. So you want to sponsor, you want some money coming into Canada soccer right now.
There's some synergy going on right now.
Out of China. That's where you go. No?
Cold pack of
You know who they are? You know those Chinese people that were walking in on Amy.
They're probably next door to Dubs.
That's right.
That's who it was.
Dubs, you got to be careful. There might be a drone hanging over your bed right now.
Just below the ceiling, just hovering
You
there.
can't see
That's
it.
a little bit odd. That's strange.
That's why I keep going on mute. There's a strange humming in my room. It's bizarre.
Vibrating? Is it vibrating?
No, there's no one snuck anything into my luggage. No.
Yeah, no kidding. That's the men's side of football games. Yeah.